Well, if I'm looking a little spiffier than normal on Sunday morning, you kind of have to understand I'm competing with the Almighty. Not that it's really any competition anyway, but I sort of figure if I'm going to try and infringe on the big guy's day, I'll at least be looking somewhat good doing it. Lord, please don't strike me down with lightning. I'm just joking, really. Anyway, greetings. Hello. How are you? How you doing? And howdy out there in internet land. My name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. Welcome to a special Sunday edition of Front Porch Brunch, our little gathering on the weekends where we get together and talk about what's going on in the news. And oh my gosh, in the past 48 hours have we got a lot of news to get into. A lot of news, a lot of analysis, a lot of comments, a lot of things to think about. So if you haven't done it yet, send out a tweet, send out a Getter, send out a Truth Social, send out wherever you may be out there on social media. And as I said in my advertisement on Twitter, please do not disrupt your normal plans if you attend services on Sunday, but we're glad to have you here and talk about what is going on. So this is going to be a really good morning. Glad to have you guys. We are on YouTube, we are on Rumble, we are on Twitter. So yes, bonjour, good lady. Glad to have you here this morning. Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about, and hopefully we're going to have a nice crowd in spite of the fact this is on a Sunday. So a little bit of explanation to start. As those of you all know, I have a couple of great nephews, and one of them is playing on a travel baseball team this time of the year. So he had a doubleheader yesterday, and as trying to be a good great uncle, I thought I would attend because, these days in their lives, you don't ever get them back, which, I'm at that stage in life where I'm just young enough not to be old, but old enough not to be young. And if I can dispense any advice to any of you, if you have children, if you have, or even grandchildren for that matter, or, wherever you may be in life, take advantage of those days when you can be around them, because believe me, it goes by in the blink of an eye. It really does. I mean, for my part, I don't have kids, but my sister had two fantastic sons. They are now parents of their own, and their kids are growing up. And, if as much as possible, if you can do it, try to spend some time with them, because it's an amazing age in which they find themselves. So that's all that. Anywho, we're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're on Twitter. So thank you for all the kind words you've been sending out to everybody. And, drop your comments in chat. And we've got a ton to talk about this morning. And let's just dive right in. Let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Yesterday, the House of Representatives passed a series of bills having to do with foreign aid to Israel, to Ukraine, to Taiwan, to other things going on. And the stuff they put in those bills is just enough to make you crazy. But the part that probably makes you crazy the most is the fact that there's a Republican majority in the House. We supposedly have a conservative speaker, although that's debatable depending on who you talk to. And yet the Democrats are getting every priority that they want on foreign policy. And we're going to get into some analysis of that. We're going to get into some commentary. I've got some clips from the boys at the Duran, and I've been waiting for them to comment on this. And fortunately, they did this morning. And the things I've got lined up for us to talk about, I want you guys to hear their analysis, because they've got some insights I think really ought to be considered. So let me take a sip of tea and we'll get this thing started. Nectar of the gods. All right. So you're sitting out there and you're asking yourself, how in the world can Democrats get foreign policy initiatives and priorities through a House when you have a Republican majority? Well, that word majority is a little bit misleading. They have a one-seat majority. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, knew that any vote for aid to Ukraine is extremely unpopular inside of his own caucus. So he did something that I'm not quite sure how he did it. Did he reach out directly to the Democrats, or did they bail him out? Well, I'm more inclined to think he reached out to them, but let's just get started. This is from thehill.com. Democrats help advance Ukraine, Israel aid in very rare rules move. This is an article by Michael Schnell. He published this about 2 days ago. This was just midnight on Friday. The House Rules Committee late Thursday advanced a package of foreign aid bills, but only with the help from Democrats in a rare move supported by the procedural vote amid opposition from a trio of hardline Republicans. Thomas Massie, Chip Roy, and Ralph Norman of South Carolina opposed the rule. So basically, he had to rely on Democrats to get the rule through, just to get it to the floor. And good morning to you, sir. It is so good to see you. As always, your presence makes the place a little bit brighter and, more fun. And that's about as far as I'm going to take it, because anything else starts getting into pure BS, and we're not going to do that. Anyway, we're glad to have you here, Brentley. So that was to advance the rule. Well, then it went one step further. Another article from thehill.com, Michael Schnell and Mike Lillis. House advances Ukraine aid as Dems help Speaker and the GOP. So now remember, the Democrats helped them pass the rule. The House advanced legislation Friday to send aid to Ukraine and other embattled U.S. allies overseas, clearing a key procedural hurdle as Democrats stepped in to back the measure, a rare move by the minority party, but one that was crucial to nudge the package forward in the face of fierce conservative opposition. The chamber approved the foreign aid rule 316 to 94, opening up debate on a quartet of bills containing military aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, with humanitarian assistance going to Gaza and other global war zones. So they passed the rule out of committee, they passed the rule in the House, and that led to what happened on Saturday. House approves aid for Ukraine, Israel after bitter partisan fight. Let me back this up a little bit, and I'll let you see what I think was the final vote tally on this. There we go. 311 to 112. There were a few non-votes. Maybe they voted after the fact before this was posted. Lawmakers in both parties jointly joined forces Saturday to send a massive package of aid to the Senate, ending a long and bitter stalemate over the fate of the legislation, and all but ensuring the delivery of billions of dollars in new help to embattled allies across the globe. The rare weekend votes were the culmination of months of fierce debate within the GOP conference over how or even if Congress should step in with another round of military aid for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, while providing humanitarian assistance to victims in Gaza and other war-torn regions around the globe. The debate had split House Republicans into warring factions, pitting Reagan-minded traditionalists who support strong intervention overseas to... Now, wait a minute. That's a misstatement. We'll get to that in a minute. Who support strong interventions overseas to counter the imperial designs of Russia and China against a newer brand of America First conservative who fought to limit the foreign spending and focus instead on domestic problems, particularly the migrant crisis at the southern border. Okay, let's get into this. I'm sorry. The authors of this article from thehill.com, who wrote this thing? Was it Michael Schnell? Yeah, Michael Schnell and Mike Lillis. I'm sorry, that's a misnomer. These are not Reagan traditionalists. They are George Herbert Walker Bush traditionalists, okay? Yes, there was a lot of things Reagan was involved in terms of foreign policy, but you can't sit there and say Reagan stuck his nose everywhere around the world. Reagan did stuff if there was a vital U.S. national security interest. That's not what Poppy Bush did, but that's a whole other debate for a whole other time. So they did it. They absolutely did it. I've heard the words traitor. I've heard the words sellout to describe Mike Johnson. I'm not going to say I don't believe it, because having been sold out by so many different Republicans over the years. Oh, we're gonna get to that, dear. We're gonna get to that. Hang on. We're gonna get to that. But there are a couple other points about this, and we got to get into it. Yeah, exactly, Ruben. Exactly. Glad to have you here, brother. Glad to have you here. And good morning, my dear. Good morning. Glad you're in the house. But the debate on the whole thing absolutely at some points made you want to turn your stomach. I have got to play you Jerry Conley from the 11th District of Virginia. Folks, if your blood pressure is not up this morning anyway because of what's going on in the world, this one will might send you over the edge. You got to hear this. This is Jerry Conley, Democrat from Virginia, on the House floor yesterday as they were debating these aid packages. Folks, do me a favor and listen to this.
Some say, well, we have to deal with our border first. The Ukrainian-Russian border is our border. It's the border between depraved autocracy and freedom-loving people seeking our democratic way of life. Do we have a stake in that outcome? Yes. Undeniably, yes.
But the problem, Jerry, is you can't spell out for anybody what that priority is. You can't spell out what that stake is. You can't explain to anybody what is our vital national security interest. And this argument that says that the Ukrainian people are wanting democracy just as much as we are, well, if they want democracy so much, how come Vladimir Zelensky and the current government of Ukraine is not allowing elections? You do realize that, right? They're not allowing democratic elections in the government of Ukraine. They're not allowing for freedom of the press. They're not allowing for most of the freedoms that we have had for centuries and we take for granted and sometimes abuse. I mean, it's stuff like Jerry Conley's. I want to scream. Their border is our border. Really? Jerry, the last time I looked at a map, I didn't see anything about Ukraine either being on the north or the south of the U.S. Unbelievable. But and Gypsy just alluded to it a minute ago. I got to show you this because I mean, if the comment from Jerry Conley didn't get you, this one will. Okay. This one will just blow your mind. You got to see this. This was upon passage of the Ukraine aid bill. It's 9 seconds long, but it's really all you need. Watch this. You know, that image, I will say this. That image might come back to haunt everybody who voted for this. And notice I didn't say Democrats. I'm talking everybody voted for this. The margin of passage on the Ukraine aid bill, check this out. This will blow. It'll surprise you, but it won't. Don't worry, dear. I won't show you anymore. I understand. You have a digestive tract and a digestive system. I'm not going to abuse you while you're trying to obtain sustenance. So I get it. But the vote on just the Ukraine aid package, look at this. 311 to 112. Okay, fine. You kind of expect that. Look at the Republicans. The majority of their conference didn't want to vote for this. For whatever reason, you can say they're right, wrong, or otherwise, but the point is they didn't want to vote for it. And they didn't. It's about 100 of them, a little over 100 of them that said, yeah, we're going to vote for this. We're going to do it. We're going to send money to Ukraine. Just unbelievable. But it's done. The Biden administration, the State Department, the military-industrial complex, however you want to phrase it, they got it. They got it through. Now, that sort of begs some very interesting questions. And I'm going to go ahead and do something right now because I want you guys to have this.
Already been systematically...
Stop that. Alex, don't you dare start doing anything till I'm ready for you to do it. Daggone it. Okay.
Hi, team.
Sorry, folks. I love and hate my computer all at the same time, because it will do things to me when I'm not expecting it to. And when I need it to do the thing I want it to do, it doesn't do it. I've often joked that I'm working with, there we go. I often joke around that I'm working with a tin can and string operation. So true. Okay. I am putting this in chat right now. This is the link to the most recent video from the Duran. And y'all have got to have this, because this thing runs about 25 minutes. We're not going to play all of it, but there's some selected clips from here. You have got to hear this whole thing. If you're not familiar with Alex Cristofaro and Alexander Macoras, I really recommend these guys to you. One of them is based out of London. The other is based out of Cyprus. They comment on questions of foreign policy, and let me tell you, they're probably two of the best that there are out there. These guys are nothing short of amazing. And I wanted to hear what their take was going to be on this, and the more I heard, the more I realized, wow, these guys are absolutely on fire with this. So I wanted to bring it to you. There are 3 clips I want to play. Now, the first one runs a little over 3 minutes. I'll interrupt it if I need to, but I really want you to hear this thing in its entirety, okay? And please drop your comments in chat. I'm dying to hear what you guys are thinking of this, because this is pretty good. This is pretty amazing stuff. So they get into the question of, okay, they passed. Usually they start out with a discussion of, all right, what's going on in the war with Ukraine? I mean, they cover all kinds of different aspects of European politics, but I mean, obviously the war in Ukraine is the biggest thing going on over there right now. So about for the first 6 minutes, they do a discussion of what's currently happening. Well, they give you some updates about where the Russians are as far as advancing through Kiev, or excuse me, Ukraine. Then Alex Cristofaro asks his counterpart, Alexander Macoras, so what does this money really do? This $61 billion, let's talk about it. I want you guys to hear this. Like I said, this is going to run a little over 3 minutes. We'll stop it where we need to, but I really want you to hear this in its entirety. So check this out.
Right. So that brings us to the 61 billion from Johnson. A part of that money is going to go to keep the Ukrainian economy afloat. That's the loan part. Economic assistance, 10 billion, about 10 billion. That's going to be loaned to Ukraine. Of course, the loan can be canceled by a president. But
now, does that really mean it's a loan? I mean, seriously, if a future American president can say, you know what, we like you guys, we're going to let you off the hook. Did we really loan them money, or did we just give it to them under pretense? But I continue.
Whatever, they're calling it a loan. So that's going to try and keep the Ukraine economy, along with some funds from the EU. They're going to try to keep the salaries all paid up, and everyone in the parliament and the Zelensky administration, they're going to keep them well fed, I guess. And
because those vacation homes on the Black Sea are kind of costly these days. So, a few million here and a few million there kind of helps out some brothers.
And prevent any type of social unrest, which I guess is important, or any type of palace intrigue. But then you have the bulk of the money, which is going to go to the MIC. Is it going to make any difference? What do you see playing out with these funds?
Okay, let me clarify. MIC in their vernacular is military industrial complex. Now, here's where Alexander Macoras gets into his answer, and you've got to hear this.
Well, I mean, let's actually talk about the funds. I mean, first of all, the loan is an absurdity. I mean, the idea that you loan money to Ukraine at a time when it's about to lose the war and its economy is in collapse is a grotesque idea. I mean, you're giving away money that you're never going to see again. Let's be absolutely clear about this. I mean, anybody
they're calling it a loan. They want to call it a loan.
They want to call it a loan, but I mean, it's the stupidest idea I've ever seen. Now, as I understand it, the way this is going to work with the military appropriations is that $24 billion is going to go to the MIC in order for them to produce new weapons to replace American inventories, and specifically American inventories. $14 billion is going to go to Ukraine to provide the Ukrainians with more weapons. So what's actually going to happen if you just sit back and think that through and do the sums? What that actually means is that the American inventories are going to be depleted even faster. The MIC is going to do very well because the MIC is going to get another injection of $24 billion. But it is going to take them years to produce the weapons that the $24 billion are going to buy. They have to make them, they have to set up the production, the prices will rise, all of that sort of thing. The $14 billion that they're going to give to Zelensky for weapons, that's going to be used up at once. I mean, the weapons are going to be sent to Ukraine at once. So what you're going to have is you're going to reduce your stockpile by a further $14 billion of weapons. And you're going to keep your fingers crossed that in 2 or 3 years' time, these extra $24 billion of weapons finally arrive. In the meantime, until that happens, you've got fewer weapons. I just wanted to say that because I don't think this has been properly understood.
Okay. Did you guys catch what they just said? And I'm dying to see your comments on this. Let me get pulled back up here. Are you guys catching what they're saying? Okay. Now, again, I have not independently verified this for myself, but it wouldn't take much for me to do it. But if the Alexes are correct, okay, $24 billion will go to various military contractors for the purchase of new weapons to put back into the American supply. Okay. $14 billion is going toward directly sending military hardware out of our current inventory. And the rest of the money is going to be used for various economic purposes, etc., and so on. Okay. Now, Alexander Macoris has a very valid point. This is not like, weaponry that's coming off of an assembly line and you can just crank this stuff out, like it's coming off like cars coming off an assembly line. It doesn't work like that. You're talking about high precision, highly technical, highly computerized weapon systems. They take years to construct. So basically what you're going to have here, again, if they're right, is a lag. We're going to take $14 billion of military hardware, ship it over to Ukraine, and then in the meanwhile, military contractors will be making weapons to replace the weapons that we sent over to Ukraine. And in the meanwhile, our inventory here in the U.S. is depleted. And it's going to take, a couple of years maybe to get that stuff replenished back into our supply. Now think about the madness of this for a second, okay? Think about that. And Macoris's point is perfectly valid. Yeah, the military contractors, they're going to be fine. They're going to make a lot of money off this deal. The Ukrainian people, they're going to burn what we're going to send over there. They're going to burn through like that. They'll just absolutely burn right through it. Okay? Absolutely they will. They'll burn right through it. And that sort of begs a bunch of other questions, okay, which we'll get to here momentarily. Now, depending upon whose report you look at about what's going on over there, the Russians are advancing steadily through Ukraine. They took a major town a couple of weeks ago. That's allowed them to, move around in various places. So, let us just for the sake of argument here, let us assume that the boys from the Duran are correct in their analysis and the information that they're getting. That the Russians are steadily advancing through Ukraine. that we're about to send $14 billion of weapons, and those weapons are really not that effective against the Russians, because we've been supplying these weapons already, and the Russians are just shooting them down, or they're just out and out destroying them. I mean, I haven't got the clip pulled up here, but Christopher and Macoris point out the fact that there's a Russian hypersonic missile that they've got that's destroying our Patriot batteries. We're sending over Patriot missile systems, and the Russians are just, destroying them at every turn. So that sort of begs the question: if the Russians are advancing as well as they are, and we're about to send basically $14 billion of direct military hardware to Ukraine, what's the point of all this? I want to play you a couple of clips, and then I want to comment on this. And these are shorter than the other ones. So one runs about 50 seconds and the other runs about 30. So what's the point of all this? Well, they have an answer. Check this out.
The game, for me, was given away by a statement made by the CIA director, William Burns. He says if Ukraine doesn't get more support, there's a real chance that before the end of this year, Ukraine will collapse. Whereas if it is given more military support, he is confident that it can see 2024 through. What happens at the end of the year? What happens, to be precise, in November? The election. So this whole thing is about preventing a Ukrainian collapse before the election.
One of the biggest sales ever. 30.
Okay, I'm going to stop that right there. If Macoris and his counterpart, Christopher, are correct, then the disgust that all of us feel who are opposed to what's going on over there, you can add in a healthy dollop of cynicism, which we're all cynical about it anyway, in one form or another. But this just absolutely ought to turn. I mean, everything else that happened yesterday ought to turn your stomach. But the more you think about what they're saying, it sounds exactly correct. I've got one more clip that I want to play, and then we'll get into this. Give me just a second to get this thing pulled up the way I need it to. I had to restart my computer a little earlier, and when that happens, it tends to throw off bookmarks, stuff that I've already got laid out. One last clip, and then we will really dive into the discussion on this. And here we go.
Of course, if your priority is to avoid a collapse by Ukraine before the end of the year, by which, of course, they really mean November, then, of course, it makes political sense. What happens after November? Well, they can worry about. They can worry about it then. It's less important. Winning the election is the key thing. You try and avoid a collapse between now and then.
Oh, my God. They're right. I mean, from my perspective, their analysis is spot on. And I'm not saying that necessarily because I agree with them, because of my position on the Ukraine war. But if you stop and run the mental hurdles in that obstacle course, you come to the end of it and you're like, yeah. I mean, I know the comment that Macoris is referring to. I read it the other day in thehill.com. I mean, the CIA director Burns basically said, if we can get them weapons, they can get through the end of the year. Well, what happens in November? Trump is up against Biden. I mean, let's lay aside the question of the fate of the Ukrainian people for just a moment. And believe me, contrary to what some people may think, I have a great deal of compassion for the Ukrainian people in all this, because as far as I'm concerned, They're being used. They're pawns. Not that sometimes I really don't feel that much different than the Ukrainian people, but let's just talk about Ukraine. The people of that nation right now are being used as pawns in a very cynical game. And what makes it even worse is if they're right, if the boys from the Duran are right, and all this is about is keeping Ukraine afloat until the end of the year, past the election. Oh my God. I mean, there's a lot of travesties that have been visited upon the Ukrainian people, but that one may be the worst of all. That all we did was keep this thing going for the benefit of a decrepit old man currently in the White House to make sure we can keep that decrepit old man in the White House just a little bit longer. I mean, right now I'm calm and I'm doing my best to stay that way. But if I start giving this a whole lot of thinking throughout the whole day, I'm going to get more and more mad. I will. They're trying to keep this thing going because think about it for a second. Biden is losing on the economy. Biden is losing on immigration on the southern border. The only thing he has his hat to hang on, the only thing he's got his hat to hang on is foreign policy. And let's think about it further. What's the biggest foreign policy initiative of the Biden administration? Ukraine. And if Ukraine falls apart militarily and politically before the November election, then Biden's done. I mean, there's a real good chance right now he loses in November. But if it comes out in the major mainstream press that Ukraine has been forced into terms of surrender on the military battlefield, such that they want to go to the negotiating table with the Russians because the Russians have defeated them, in spite of multi-billions of dollars of military aid that has been pumped into Ukraine to keep the Zelensky regime going, if that gets out, he's done. Forget about, well, he might have a chance. No, he's done. The whole funding of Ukraine has grown steadily and steadily more unpopular. I mean, regardless of whether you think it's right, regardless of whether you think it's wrong, to the American people, they do not want to be spending money on Ukraine when we've got problems on our own southern border, which makes perfect sense, by the way. You can't blame them for that. They've got crime running amok in their neighborhoods and in their cities. And a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it is coming from illegal immigrants. They want this border under control, yet it seems like we're doing nothing about it. But we're making sure Ukraine's border is secure. If it gets out that Ukraine has fallen to the Russians before November, Biden is done. There is no bringing it back. There's no October surprise. You could have an August surprise, a September surprise, an October surprise, the weekend before the election surprise. It won't matter. He's done. He's finished. And like I say, if the boys from the Duran are correct in their analysis, and apparently they're not the only ones coming to this conclusion. Redacted did a thorough show on this the other day about who is really fighting in Ukraine and the horror conspiracy. Yeah. If everybody who's looking at this from the outside is correct in their assumptions, then this is worse than anybody realizes on so many levels. But the quartet of bills that passed on Saturday had some other things in them that are just making me go, oh my God. Y'all, check this out. A little while back, I did a video or comment, I'm sure it was a video, on the idea that was being kicked around inside DC that we could unfreeze certain Russian assets in our banks and in banks around Europe and turn around and give it to the Ukrainians. Well, guess what happened on Saturday? Headline from NBC News: Congress passes bill that could unlock billions in frozen Russian assets for Ukraine. More than $6 billion of the $300 billion in frozen assets are sitting in U.S. banks. Article by Anna Schechter, Natasha Libvita, and Matt Bradley. We have the following. The House passed a foreign aid package on Saturday, as well as what's called the Repo Act, that will allow the Biden administration to confiscate billions of dollars worth of Russian assets sitting in U.S. banks and transfer them to Ukraine for reconstruction. Quote, by delivering urgently needed aid to Ukraine, the United States has asserted itself as a leader of the free world and as a reliable partner to its allies. Oh, horse crap. But I'll get to that in a minute. The U.S. has a singular obligation to help freedom fighters fight for their freedom, and nowhere more so than Ukraine, whose self-defense against Putin's aggression must prevail. The Repo Act, which would authorize Biden to confiscate the frozen Russian assets in U.S. banks and transfer them to a special fund for Ukraine, is part of the foreign aid package that was stalled for months in the House. More than $6 billion of the $300 million is frozen Russian assets sitting in U.S. banks. Most of the $300 billion are in Germany, France, and Belgium. Oh my, okay. Oh God, let's get into this. Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. But there is one consideration that our very wise Congress, and I use a lot of cynicism in that statement, is not considering. And I want to ask you guys a question. And if you think I'm full of crap, you can feel free to disagree with me. Okay? Why would any sovereign nation choose to deposit any of their monies in our banks going forward? After if Biden signs this, and you know he will, you know he's going to do it. Why would any sovereign nation choose to deposit their money into our banks? Years ago, in the early 1990s, when the late Ross Perot was running for president against George Herbert Walker Bush and Bill Clinton, he was talking, and I think it was the debate on NAFTA. He was debating Al Gore on CNN. As a matter of fact, it was the Larry King show. Now that I'm really thinking about it, Ross Perot said, "You're going to hear a giant sucking sound coming out of Mexico as all our jobs go down south of the border." Well, the next thing you're going to know, there's going to be a giant sucking sound coming out of foreign countries as they start pulling their money out of our banks. Because there ain't no way in the world sovereign nations are going to look at what's happened to the Russians and say, oh, the hell with this. If the Americans are just going to turn around and take our money anytime their nose gets out of joint, we're not putting any money over there. And you can't blame them. You can't blame them at all. This is absolutely one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. I mean, look, regardless of how you feel about the whole Russia-Ukraine situation, regardless of how you feel about Russia in general, or you think Putin's the Antichrist or whatever, look, let's just talk about on the basis of sovereign nations dealing with sovereign nations. Okay, you have sovereign nations who are putting their assets into our banks. Okay, all right. And now, because we don't like what sovereign nation A is doing, we, sovereign nation B, are going to just take their assets and do whatever we want with them. Unbelievable. Just absolutely unbelievable. Oh, but it gets better than that. If you think that the Russian asset confiscation bill is bad, check this out. And I know for sure I've done a video about this. Guess what, folks? We're about to get rid of TikTok. From thehill.com, the House advanced its aid package. What does this mean for the future of TikTok? Article by Philippe Timotia. Hey, I'm from West Virginia. Give me some grace. Last month, the House passed legislation that would force ByteDance, the Chinese-owned parent company of TikTok, to sell the popular app or be banned in the U.S. The bill was then flipped over to the Senate side, where it's unclear of its future. Mike Johnson made waves when he merged an adjusted measure of the $95 billion foreign aid package, which passed the House. The measure related to TikTok, tied with the foreign aid package, has different language than the previous one, which cleared the lower chamber in March. The new measure one would extend ByteDance's timeline to sell TikTok, bumping it out from 6 months to a year, an adjustment that compelled Senate Commerce Committee Chair Maria Cantwell, Democrat Washington, to support the bill in the upper chamber. The House passed the foreign aid as a four-point bill, and it's being delivered to the Senate as one measure. So yeah, we're about to give Biden the ability to force the sale of TikTok. As a general rule of thumb, I always try to come here and be cheerful and be, positive and optimistic, and I'm still going to try and do that in the midst of all this, but I am not going to lie to you. As a freedom-loving conservative, this stuff is making me want to puke. It really is. And as far as I'm concerned, look, I left the Republican Party of my own accord back in 2021. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not telling you to vote Republican. I'm not telling you to vote Democrat. I'm telling you to find the person that you think best represents freedom and vote for them. If that's a Democrat, cool. If it's a Republican, cool. But it's about individual freedom and liberty. And after what I saw Saturday, we ain't got a whole lot of it in our Congress. And there's a pretty big bunch of Republicans up there. They just need to go. There ain't no getting around it. They just flat out need to go. So yeah, Saturday was not a good day for freedom and liberty. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to lie at all. Don't know what to tell you, y'all. Like I say, I always try to be optimistic. Oh yeah. Well, she is in visiting the Lord's house. So yeah, but if she were here, we'd be needing some pour. Here, just pour it in, girl. Right here. Yeah, it was a bad day yesterday on so many levels. Just on so many levels. But no, she is visiting the Lord's house. So she said she'd catch us on the backside, and I know she will. She's good for her word. Absolutely. Oh. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well, I'll tell you what, let's shift gears. It's about 11:15 on Sunday morning. My name is Brian Trippett. I'm known as the Front Porch Conservative. I'm sometimes called the Beau in the Chapeau. Sometimes I'm called the fine fella in the fedora, and I go by so many other names, and most of them you can say on social media. We're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're on Twitter with Front Porch Brunch, our review and comment upon items in the news. We're glad you're here this morning. So if you haven't done it yet, hit the like button. Smash that like button, as a matter of fact. Smash that like button on YouTube and on Rumble. Tell your friends to get on in here. We got some other stuff to get into. And I want to do some analysis. I want to do some analysis of, I see we have a troll. Oh, hi, troll. How are you, troll? Good to see you, troll. Talk to yourself, because basically whenever you start doing this stuff, nobody listens to you anyway, but whatever. I give you one acknowledgement That's about all you're worth. Keep on trolling. Have a happy day in Jesus. So let's talk about Trump and Biden for a few minutes. I saw something the other day that just made me laugh out loud. And it was from Joe Biden of all people. And normally when it comes to Joe Biden, he gives me very little to actually laugh about anyway. But this, I couldn't help but chuckle. And every time I think about it, I have to keep on laughing. This to me is funny. This is absolutely funny. I've got to play you the clip because this is just great. So Joe Biden is in Scranton, Pennsylvania the other day, his supposed hometown, and he's giving a speech. And this clip runs about, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds or so. Let me find it here real fast. Where did it go? Oh, yeah, here it is. Here it is. About 20 seconds. Yeah. So he's giving a speech, and apparently, Joe is not getting the kind of reception that he likes, but worse yet, he's getting a reception from young people that he never expected. So I got to play this for you, and then I want to talk about it for a few minutes. Folks, do me a favor and take a listen to this.
I've never thought I'd see a time when I'm going through a neighborhood or a rural town in the West or something to see big signs that have a Trump sign in the middle that says F. Biden, and having a little kid standing with his middle finger, 7 years old, 8 years old. Well, I promise it happens all the time.
Gee, and I wonder why. Let's talk about this for a minute. So little kids are giving Joe Biden the finger. Okay, first of all, should little kids be doing that? No. Okay, I am not advocating that you teach your children or grandchildren to, flip people off, regardless of whether it's the president of the United States or anybody else, okay? That said, however, there are some angles to consider in all this. Let me ask you guys a question. And I'm sure you're old enough to remember this. Mock presidential elections in elementary school. Okay. Y'all have probably seen these news items. Usually it happens around October or early November of a presidential election year, where elementary schools will hold mock presidential elections and they'll let kids vote in a presidential election. Okay. It's obviously it's non-binding. It doesn't count, but there is something unique about it. Okay. And it's this. More often than not, political scientists have found that those mock elections that those kids vote in are very predictive of what's going to happen in the actual election. And the reason for that is the kids who are just kids, I mean, and God bless them for being kids. I'd rather them be worried about, playing on the school ground or, being on a sports team or whatever it is they do as kids. Kids are kids, but kids are influenced by the conversations that they hear from their parents. Okay. Now let's distill that down and talk about the fact that Joe Biden is seeing little kids flip him the bird. Hey, Joe, is it the fact that the kids are a bunch of unruly hooligans, or the fact that they're reflecting what their parents think about you? And the kid being a kid, the kid, snaps you off the Pennsylvania finger of friendship. The kids are doing nothing more than reflecting what the parents are thinking, which gets me to an article from the UK Telegraph. And I hope to be able to read this thing. Oh, bugger, it's not going to. But but I will show it to you. Headline: Joe Biden is struggling to win over voters amid lingering inflation. Surveys show that the economy is consistently the biggest issue for American voters. This is an article by Tony Diver. Here's my point that I'm getting to. It's no wonder that people are upset with Biden. Okay? I was at the baseball field the other day with my family, my sister, my mother, and my brother-in-law, and we're all grown adults. We have our lives, we have our households that we're responsible for. And as we were driving up to the ball field, we're having a discussion about the cost of certain things. You know, you go to a McDonald's and you buy. Oh, no, it's my nephew. We're at dinner. Give me an example. We're at a restaurant, and my nephew, whose sons are playing baseball, made the statement, "Yeah, we went through the drive-through at McDonald's, and we ordered this, this, and this. It turned out to be $20, and it wasn't that much. I mean, it was like some hash browns and a biscuit with cheese on it. Stuff. $20. Now, granted, it's he, his wife, the 3 kids, but yeah, my sister, my brother-in-law, and my mom are talking about various things we go to the store and buy. Right? The cost of it's extraordinary. I gave the example the other day. I went to a local ice cream shop here in my hometown. Ordered a milkshake that's about that tall. Okay. About that tall. $8. $8 for a milkshake. Now, granted, it's a very specialized milkshake. A lot of Hershey syrup, really good chocolate ice cream. I get that, but $8? Joe, if you're being flipped off by kids and you're seeing, 8 by 10 yard signs that say F Joe Biden, you shouldn't be shocked. But if you are shocked, does that mean you're just that insulated from what's really going on in the world? Or you just don't have the ability to understand? And I think this could happen in a lot of places. A lot of Dems up in Connecticut, they're going to leave President blank. They hate Trump, and they think Joe's senile. They'll vote straight down. Yeah, I can see this happening. I can see this happening in a lot of places. I mean, for a lot of different reasons. Inflation, the southern border, immigration, the Israeli-Hamas conflict. I mean, how many times have we gone over already, the primary results in different states? And there's a big, and I mean big contingent of Democrats who cannot bring themselves to vote for Joe Biden. Okay? They just can't do it. They won't do it. Because they're just that mad at him on one issue after the other. So, yeah, I'm not surprised Joe Biden's getting flipped off by kids and seeing a sign that says F Joe Biden. I'm just surprised it took him this long to acknowledge it. It just really kind of like blows the mind. But we talked about this the other day on our Thursday session of Chatting on the Porch, which, by the way, right now we're doing a session through the week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 p.m. Eastern. Might get expanded to more nights of the week. Don't know yet. I'm really starting to like this whole come in, do a live stream sort of thing. It's kind of nice. I'm not going to lie to you. It's easier on mind and body, although I need to start cranking out some videos. I'm not going to lie about that either. But we got together on Thursday night for Chatting on the Porch, and we talked about the reaction that Trump and Biden are getting whenever they go around certain places. And I want to come back to this because it kind of highlights the point, that Biden inadvertently made when he was in that little 20-second clip. Y'all have probably seen this. This is from when Trump visited the bodega in Harlem. This runs about 30 seconds, but check out the reaction. I mean, he's getting out of the car. So here you go.
response with USA as President Trump makes his exit.
Okay. Now, like I said the other day, advanced teams in any campaign are always going to try to set up a situation so it really looks good. Okay. And you can say that maybe some of that was staged. All right. I'm even willing to concede some of that. But did you notice something in that clip? You had young people, you had old people, you had white people, blacks, Latinos, Asians, people of different religiosities, all back there lined up and down the streets. Now, let's contrast that with two different clips of Joe Biden. Well, apparently Biden's campaign people saw what happened in Harlem, and they said, hey, man, we got to get the boss out there. They can't let that stuff stand. So they take Joe Biden to two different places. One of them is a Sheetz, and the other is a Wawa in Philadelphia. Now, the Sheetz, if I'm not mistaken, was in PA. And I've got to thank Leanne, and I kind of messed this up when she put this to me on Thursday, because I didn't put together what was going on. But I want you to watch the reaction, and I'm not going to play the whole 2 minutes of this, but I want you to watch the reaction of people at the Sheetz in Pittsburgh. Now, remember what you just saw with Trump, okay? People lined up on the sidewalks. They're chanting 4 more years. You got a really diverse crowd. You got everything else, right? Do me a favor and just watch what happens when Joe walks into a Sheetz. There's no chanting. There's no cheering. I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but you see Biden walk back there, take a picture with the guys. But through none of that, do you see anything that even remotely resembles joy, happiness, nothing. There's nothing there that makes you realize, hey, people are actually glad to see him. Now, granted, I'll even concede the possibility. Okay, I'll even concede the possibility that maybe people were genuinely surprised to see the president of the United States walk through the door, regardless of whether it's Joe Biden or whether it be Donald Trump. I'm willing to concede that part. But even then, after the initial shock of, hey, the president of the United States just walked in, nothing. There's just no reaction. Crickets. Now that was Sheetz. Let me show you the Wawa. This is the one that really cracks me up, okay? So he walks into the Wawa in Philly with the mayor of the city, and her name is, okay, it's not here. Oh yeah, here it is. Cheryl Parker, the mayor of Philadelphia, right? Folks, do me a favor and check this out.
Hey. Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
Good. How you doing, man?
And how are you doing today?
Pleasure.
It's a pleasure to meet both of you.
You got my
This
stuff,
is for
huh?
you, man. And this is for you, sir.
All right. And this is a tip for you. I know it's all been paid.
Thank you so much. Do you mind if you? Thank you, sir.
What's your name?
My name is David Johnson.
Good to see you, David.
Thank you, sir.
You know Her Honor the Mayor.
Oh, How are you, David? I'm fine. Yourself? I voted for both of you. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I gotta check out one thing. What kind of drinks do you have?
So whatever you like, so we can customize it to your specifications. So we have smoothies, we have milkshakes, we have refreshers. We also
How about a milkshake? Black and white.
a black and white milkshake. We could perfectly make that for you, sir.
Nothing. Now, granted, this is a little different setting, and I understand that. Okay, I understand. I get it. But it's not like you got people looking in the windows going, holy crap, there's Joe Biden. Let's go and say hello. Nothing. There's nothing there. I mean, how many times, and again, maybe I'm being pedantic and I apologize, but it bears commentary. How many times? Yeah, exactly, Ruben. It was staged. How many times back during the 2020 campaign, if you want to even call it that, because we all know Joe Biden was hiding out in his basement for the better part of the whole damn thing. How many times did we see stuff like this, like the visit to the Wawa in Philly? Very sterile, emotionless, mechanical, going through the motions, very scripted. Now, that very scripted part comes into play once again. I got to show you this. Now, as I've said, with every campaign, doesn't matter if it's U.S. Senate, but particularly the presidency, there's an advanced team that goes into the site ahead of time. They make certain preparations. They're making sure that nothing embarrassing or untoward happens to the candidate. You know, they're trying to get a good crowd. They're trying to make sure the press is there. Whatever their functions may be, they're there in advance. But you've got to see this, okay? This is video of the, and we played this the other day, but it bears repeating. Look at the steps that his advanced team is going, the lengths they're going to. And if I may use this word, I don't think it's out to protect Joe Biden. Okay? Now, I don't mean protect like the Secret Service does. I'm talking about protect in the political sense. To keep him from looking like a complete nitwit. Okay? Yeah. Check this out. This is footage of the advance team. Okay, so there's the guy from Sheets. He's talking with the advanced people. All right, you're going to do this. You're going to hand it to him. No, you're going to... Now, here are the bags. Here's the package of food. Yada, yada, yada. It's just so very contrived. You may want to get the mayor one.
I think somebody bring me a yogurt. Give me a yogurt. Doesn't matter which one.
And there you can see Joe and the mayor walking through the door. That's where they're coming in. Joe's looking around. Again, nobody there. Nobody happy to see him. No joy. It's very sterile, mechanical, and emotionless. That's a good, well, maybe it was the camera behind the counter. I don't know. Well, I'd expect you to heckle him. I would absolutely expect you to do that. But yeah, I mean, it just boggles the mind. It really does. If we were in a normal, rational world, I would tell you that Donald Trump would absolutely thump Joe Biden. I thought we were in a normal, rational world in 2020, when I said Trump's going to thump Joe Biden. Normal and rational to describe the current world in which I live, I don't know that I can safely use those terms anymore. Unbelievable. Just, yeah, it's just the contrast. And I was talking about this the other day with Darius Simpson, which, by the way, that was probably, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love every conversation that I have when I have somebody on for an interview, but that conversation with Darius Simpson the other day was probably one of the best chatting on the porches that I've done in a while. And he's just a load of fun. We were talking about this the other day, just the whole, here you have 4 years of Donald Trump, and here you have 4 years of Joe Biden. Here's the contrast. Voters of America, what do you want to do? That is what this election should get down to. Whether Joe Biden and his people are going to let that happen or not is a whole other question. But if this comes down to a pure choice between two different presidents and two different records of accomplishment, and we are absent any election fornication, if I may borrow Robert Barnes's term, if we are absent any election fornication, then Trump's going to blow him out. He will absolutely blow him out. But we'll see. It's about 11:30 on Sunday morning. Welcome to Front Porch Brunch. My name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. We've got Ruben here with us. We got Gypsy. We got U-Haul. We got Up in Connecticut. We got a whole wonderful group of people. And over on Rumble, we got you lurkers over there. I know you're there, you lovable lurky bunch. But that's okay. Being quiet on Rumble is okay. We're just glad you're here. We're glad. By the by, I have to say a big thank you to all the folks over on Rumble. Yes, U-Haul, we got you. Yeah, poop, brother. I gotta say thank you to the folks over on Rumble. That platform is picking up for me. And I don't necessarily mean subscribers. I didn't really have the chance to advertise that chatting on the porch with Darius the way I would have liked to. But man, when I was done, that thing had like hundreds of views on it. I was tickled to death. And don't get me wrong, I'm very happy, whether it's YouTube or Rumble, I'm very happy when people are watching my stuff. I mean, I'm not trying to be ungrateful at all. But man, over on Rumble, that thing got a bigger jolt than YouTube. And it's really kind of surprising. I was pleasantly surprised. So, for all you rumblers over there who are watching my stuff, God bless you guys. That's awesome of you. I appreciate it. Let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about some stuff. We'll go straight into Hodgepodge stew. Some of this we've talked about already, and some of it we haven't. And I want to get to something that happened last week. And ladies, I mean, ever since the Garden of Eden, y'all have been suffering through a lot of things throughout world history. But one of the cruelest things may have been done to you this week, thanks to the Biden administration. This is from USA Today. Headline: Biden finalizes Title IX rules to boost rights of sexual assault victims and LGBTQ students. The new rules are set to take effect just a few months before the presidential election and will apply to sex-based discrimination complaints filed on or after August 1st. Article written by, let me find it here, Zachary Schmermelli. Love that name. The Biden administration on Friday finalized a long-awaited overhaul of Title IX, the decades-old federal law that protects students from sex and gender-based discrimination. The rules will reverse the Trump-era policies. Oh, my God, every time. I have a question for you guys before I read this any further. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being he's totally ambivalent, and 10 being burning hatred with heat as hot as from the flames of hell. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you think Joe Biden hates Donald Trump? Because every time I read a headline about something that Joe Biden is doing, it's usually prefaced with in a reversal of Trump policy. Yeah, honey, you're probably right. Forget 10, it's probably more like 10 million. You're probably right. Well, let's get back to the article. The rules will reverse Trump-era policies that critics say for years have bolstered the rights of people accused of sexual assault on college campuses. When Joe Biden was running for president, he described his predecessor's Title IX regulations as, quote, a green light to ignore sexual violence and strip survivors of their rights. Under the new policy, colleges will be allowed to use a lower standard to find someone guilty of sexual misconduct. The federal government will also raise its expectations of schools across the country by requiring them to quickly respond to all types of sex-based discrimination, not just sexual harassment, which is the current threshold. And colleges will do away with a controversial requirement for live hearings, including potentially traumatic cross-examinations between victims and those they accuse of sexual-based misconduct. It's a change that victims' rights advocates have been eagerly pushing since Biden took office. The rule spent years wading through government red tape. It still hasn't fully cleared all bureaucratic hurdles, and was announced months after Education Department originally said it would be finalized. The regulations will officially expand the rights of LGBTQ students and staff, setting in stone definitions that will protect people who identify as queer and transgender from harassment or discrimination in any school that receives federal funding. Pregnant students will also be better protected under the new rules. Yeah, the irony abounds. The irony abounds, and good morning, small time. Glad to have you here. Protector of sexual misconduct victims. Yeah. I mean, if they're going to do that, why not put Bill Clinton in charge of it? Oh, did I say something naughty? Yeah, but you're absolutely right. It's rich. It really is. Now, as you might expect, this was not well received, and you can kind of understand the why. I've got to play you a clip from Megyn Kelly. I don't play a lot of clips from Megyn, but every so often she'll, and I'm not speaking ill of her, so please don't misunderstand me, but every so often she'll really drop something that just really you ought to hear. And I think we're about to get into that. So folks, do me a favor. She has a reaction to this Title IX change. Check this out.
Title IX is that your daughter will now have to go into your college bathroom, your college locker room, and be faced with men posing as women, many of whom are only there because they get off on wearing women's clothing. Joe Biden did it with his education secretary. It's an agency regulation. Your kid gets no protection. That's why Betsy DeVos, when she took over as education secretary after Barack Obama left office, tried to restore some semblance of normalcy. Was it because Betsy DeVos hates women? She loves rape? She wanted women to get raped over and over and for their assailants to walk free? Hell no. She wanted just a semblance of due process, and that's what she did under Trump. They've undone most of her solutions to the overreach that Obama and Duncan imposed.
Yeah, and nothing in the USA Today article about this. Nothing. Like I said, there have been a lot of injustices that have been done to women since the Garden of Eden. I'm not going to say this is the worst, but if you want an example of what Joe Biden thinks about women, there you go. Oh, that's hard. You can't say that. He has respect for women. Really? Really? He has so much respect for women that he's going to let a bunch of guys dressed up like women roam around in women's locker rooms on college campuses and whatever. And there's not a daggone thing, the ladies on campus can do about it. Or very little, let's put it that way. Because if they scream, hey, I don't want this guy in a women's locker. Oh, he's not a guy. He's a trans girl. Don't you know? Unbelievable. Up is down and down is up, and I can't tell the difference anymore. I just can't. All right, let's get into some other stuff in Hodgepodge stew. We kind of touched on this the other day, and I said that I'd come back to it on the weekend and really try and give this some justice. Last Saturday, when we had brunch, I was telling you guys the story about Yuri Berliner. Now, if you haven't heard about this, or you're watching this video for the first time, and you're not a regular member of Fedora Nation, which, by the way, what the heck's the matter with you? If you're watching this video and you're not familiar with my channel, first of all, you can hit the like button. And number two, you can subscribe. Because daggone it, where else are you going to go on the internet and get this much information from a man looking this good? I mean, seriously, people, come on. But so humble about all of it too. So, but anyway, last Saturday we got together and we talked about Yuri Berliner. Now, if you don't know who Yuri Berliner is, he's was a 25-year veteran at National Public Radio, and a self-described liberal, by the way. I've never really come across his work prior to this whole thing that's blown up where he's concerned. But, he's been at NPR was at NPR for 25 years. He was one of their business editors and a self-described liberal. He wrote a piece at thefreepress.com, which is Barry Weiss's organization. And he talked about the now obvious bias that had infected the reporting at the news agency where he had been for a quarter of a century. I mean, in his piece, and I'm not going to pull it back up, but it's at thefreepress.com, and it's he published it under his own name, so it's not like he's hiding anything at all. But he wrote a piece, and he was talking about, and he acknowledged in his piece that there has always been a certain amount of liberal bias at NPR. But ever since 2016, with the election of Donald Trump, it had gotten worse, and it had even accelerated under their new editor-in-chief, Catherine Mayer. And it's all about diversity, equity, inclusion, and race, and other things that he's like, look, what does this have to do with the reporting of the news? Why can't we just report the news and let people make up their own mind? Which, dude, you're a liberal. Yuri, if you ever watch this, you're a liberal. I'm a conservative. We're not going to agree on much of anything. But, brother, on that point, I'm down with you. I mean, like I say, we may not agree on much politically, but I'll stand with you on that hill. I got no problem with that at all. And frankly, for my part, Mr. Berliner, if you ever watch this, dude, I'm sorry for what's happened to you. I really am, because you spent a quarter century of your life at this institution. And to watch them do what they did. And what did they do, you might ask? So he publishes this piece at thefreepress.com. NPR's reaction, this is from CNN, NPR suspends editor who claimed left-wing bias at outlet had lost America's trust, by Joe Pasantino and Oliver Darcy. So they suspend him and basically locked him out of his place of employment. His response? He resigned. 25 years of his life. Now you can sit there and argue it was right, it was wrong. For 25 years he was working for a bad organization. We can argue the merits of publicly funded news organizations like NPR or PBS, and believe me, I don't care to have that discussion with anybody. But 25 years of this man's life, gone. Why? Because he dared to look at the organization that he worked for and loved, by the way. I mean, we're not talking about some disgruntled employee here. Okay? He looked at his employer and said, "Hey guys, we need to have a conversation about what's going on here. We need to have a conversation because I don't think what we're doing is in our best interest, or is it even healthy in the long run." And what did the progressive, open-minded, and tolerant folks at NPR do to him? They threw him out, suspended him. They didn't listen to his complaints. They heard his complaints, but they didn't listen to them. There's a profound difference between hearing something and listening to it. Hearing it means you can acknowledge the sound. Listening to it means not only you acknowledge the sound, you understand what's being communicated. They heard him, but they didn't listen. And for his honest and open criticism, they didn't even listen to him, and they threw him out on his ear. So much for open-minded tolerance on the left. But then again, I asked this question the other day. I asked this last Saturday. What does it say about the state of NPR that Yuri Berliner, a 25-year veteran of the organization, what does it say about Yuri Berliner that he had to go outside of NPR to get his message out to his organization? I mean, why didn't they allow a debate inside NPR? Why not do it on the air? I think that would have been fascinating. I really do. Why not allow a debate on the radio between Yuri Berliner and Catherine Mayer? Or if Catherine didn't want to do it, somebody else at NPR. A vice president of operations or something like that. I don't care. Why not allow that debate to happen? Because he didn't want it. Why? Because they're not wrong. He is. Why? Because here's the hive mind, and here's the individual dissenter. And the dissenter is not buzzing at the same pitch of the hive, and therefore the hive must stop this dissenter. Not with lethal force, it's not what I'm talking about, but they've got to quash the dissent. The fact that Yuri Berliner had to go to the freepress.com to publish this essay already as far as I'm concerned anyway, ought to tell you everything you need to know about what's going on over there. And not just NPR, by the way. The gatekeeper media in general. They don't want dissent. They don't want to talk about legitimate criticisms. They want to project their message, ignore everything else, and just go right on. And in the meanwhile, guys like Yuri Berliner, who again, if he and I ever sat down over some adult beverages and talked about what we thought about political views on certain issues, I doubt that Yuri Berliner and I would agree on much of anything. But even though I may not agree with him, I respect his right to say it. Let's he and I have the debate out there in the public square. Or let him have the debate with anybody. But not the open-minded, tolerant NPR. No, we can't have that. I mean, I don't know if this is going to change his political stance or his views on any number of issues, but I'll tell you one thing. It's going to open his eyes. And not just his eyes, by the way. It's going to open the eyes of a lot of people. Darius and I were talking about this the other day, and again, if you didn't get the chance to see that session of chatting on the porch yesterday, go back and find it. It's a really good one. I think Darius is absolutely right. I think a lot of people are getting their eyes opened. Now, how long it takes them to change what they think, sort of up to the individual. But I really do believe my heart and soul that we are at a very interesting point intellectually, politically, culturally. It's a time that's fascinating, but it's also a time that's absolutely a lot of eyes are being opened. Yeah. Yeah, that's I mean I not and it's not confined to NPR, by the way. That hatred of dissent, it's not just confined to NPR. I mean, MSNBC supposedly has some conservatives on their network. You know, how conservative they are is kind of up for debate. But they don't ask yourself this question. Even though and for the record, he was employed there at one time. But could you see Rachel Maddow invite Tucker Carlson on her show for a 1-hour debate? Come on. I mean, the left is all about open-mindedness and tolerance and, diversity of views and all that happy jazz. Could you see Rachel Maddow invite Tucker Carlson on her show for a 1-hour debate? Of course not. She'll never do it. Could you see Jake Tapper invite Steve Bannon on his show for a 1-hour debate? Or, well, let's just go through a list of names here. Could you see Joy Reid inviting, let's see, who could I hook up with Joy Reid? That would be a really good one to have. Jack Posobiec. Could you see Joy Reid inviting Jack Posobiec on her show for a 1-hour debate? And you know what, Gypsy? You're absolutely right. They couldn't even handle the idea of Ronna McDaniel, who is not exactly a flame-throwing America First MAGA type Republican. MSNBC couldn't even handle that. There ain't no way in the infernal regions of Dante's hell they'd let Tucker Carlson or Jack Posobiec or anybody else who's in the vanguard, intellectually speaking, of the populist America First conservative movement. They'd never let him on MSNBC or CNN or anyplace else. Guarantee you. And this is a really good point. I don't know if this was totally her thinking, but I tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised. Really wouldn't be surprised. But I mean, getting back to Yuri Berliner, I mean, for my part, I feel bad for the guy. I really do. I mean, look, it's like I said, I probably wouldn't agree with him on much of anything politically or socially, but the man gave 25 years of his life to an institution. And when he tried to do what he thought was the right thing to make that institution better, they just crapped on him and just threw him out, threw him on his ear. I don't care if you're liberal or conservative. Man, that's a hard pill to swallow. It really is. So, just amazing. Just amazing. So let me shift gears. I want to get to another story, a couple of stories actually, before we wrap it up. And if you just happen to be popping in, be it on YouTube or on Rumble or on Twitter, this is Front Porch Brunch, a weekend gathering of newsies, or as Mr. Goodnight called us, Fedora Nation. And I am the leader of Fedora Nation. I am the Front Porch Conservative, otherwise known as Brian Trippett, among other nomenclatures that I go by. But I want to get to a couple other stories, and one of them is just fascinating. It's also frightening. I saw the video of this happening because somebody, I guess it got recorded somehow. Did you guys hear about the gentleman who set himself on fire outside the courthouse in New York City where the Trump trial is being held? I'm not going to play the video because it's not that I'm trying to hide anything from you. So, I mean, it's very disturbing to watch. I'm not going to lie. I mean, the video captures him very clearly putting the gasoline, whatever it was that he put on himself. And then the next thing you see is him going up in flames. I'm not going to lie. I had to turn away. I couldn't watch all of it. The man literally set himself on fire. This is from the UK Guardian. Man dies after setting himself on fire outside Trump trial courthouse. Man identified by police as Max Azzarello from Florida declared dead after incident outside Lower Manhattan Courthouse. A man has died after setting himself on fire outside the New York courthouse where Donald Trump's hush money trial case is taking place. The New York City Police Department said on Saturday the man had been declared dead by staff at an area hospital. Officials had said earlier the man, who's in his late 30s, was in critical condition. The New York Police Department said the man, who was identified as Max Azzarello from St. Augustine, Florida, did not appear to be targeting Trump or others involved in the trial. Witnesses said the man pulled pamphlets out of a backpack and threw them in the air before he doused himself with a liquid and set himself on fire on Friday. One of those pamphlets included references to evil billionaires, but portions were visible to a Reuters witness did not mention Trump. Quote, right now we are labeling him sort of a conspiracy theorist, and we are going from there, said Tariq Shepard, a deputy commissioner with the police department, at a news conference. The smell of smoke lingered in the plaza shortly after the incident, according to Reuters witness, and police officers sprayed a fire extinguisher on the ground. Now, the next thing I've got here was from Colin Rugg, who's a independent journalist, the co-author of Trending Politics. Now, I have not seen this for myself, so I just want to put that out there up front. But what Colin has got here comes from part of a manifesto that this gentleman, Max Azzarello, wrote, supposedly. And again, I have not seen the manifesto for myself, but I'm just putting this out here for public consumption. Oh, I can't believe you went there. I cannot believe you went there. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. That's funny. I gotta, may or may not be, but that's funny. Anyway, this is from supposedly from his manifesto, from Max Azzarello's manifesto. My name is Max Azzarello, and I am an investigative researcher who has set himself on fire outside the Trump trial in Manhattan. This extreme act of protest is to draw attention to an urgent and important discovery. We are the victims of a totalitarian con, and our own government, along with many of their allies, is about to hit us with an apocalyptic fascist world coup. We are victims of a totalitarian con, and our own government, along with... Oh, okay, I read that, sorry. These claims sound like fantastical conspiracy theory, but they are not. They are proof of conspiracy. If you investigate this mountain of research, you will prove them too. If you learn a great deal about the Ponzi schemes, you will discover that our life is a lie. If you follow this story and the links below, you will discover the rotten truth of post-truth America. You will learn the scariest and stupidest story in the world. And you will realize that we are all in a desperate state of emergency that requires your action. To my friends and family, witnesses, and first responders, I deeply apologize for inflicting this pain upon you, but I assure you it is a drop in the bucket compared to what our government intends to inflict. Because these words are true, this is an act of revolution. His manifesto said, like I said, I have not read it myself yet, but yeah, really scary stuff. Now, I do have one question, and I'm not trying to stir the drink, any more than it needs to be stirred at an absolute minimum, but I do have a question. and I'm not speaking ill of the Secret Service in this, so please don't misunderstand my question. But how is this guy able to get so close to the courthouse and do this? Again, I'm not trying to lay blame. I'm not trying to sow seeds of doubt. I think it's a legitimate question. How did this guy get so close to the courthouse that he was able to do this? I'm not expecting necessarily that there be some kind of complete lockdown of like a 4-block radius around this courthouse while the trial's going on, but this just kind of seems kind of surprising. This guy was able to get this close and do this kind of stuff. Just asking. Really scary. And I feel bad for his family. I really do. I really feel bad for the guy. So, shift gears got a couple more stories, and then I'm going to wrap it up for the day. So by the by, and this is one of the stories I want to get to. A lot of people have said that Donald Trump does not have a lot of allies in this this case that's being brought in Manhattan by Alvin Bragg, who we lovingly refer to as Alvin the New York Chipmunk. Well, it turns out Trump may be about to get help from one of the most unlikely places of all. Did you guys see this headline on Friday or over the weekend? This is from Breitbart. Michael Avenatti, Trump's legal team contacted him, and he is more than willing to testify. Oh, my God. Man, talk about help from the most unlikely of places. Check this out. Article written by Elizabeth Wiebel. The former attorney for adult entertainment star Stormy Daniels, Michael Avenatti, claims that former President Trump's legal team has contacted him and he would be willing to testify. Avenatti, who was found guilty of taking money from former clients, obstructing the IRS from taking millions of dollars in unpaid payroll taxes, and attempting to extort Nike, told the New York Post that Trump's legal defense team has been in contact with him. Avenatti was sentenced to 14 years in prison in December 2022, on top of serving 5 years in prison for 2 prior convictions. Quote, I'd be more than happy to testify. I don't know that I will be called upon to testify, but I have been in touch with Trump's legal defense for the better part of a year, Avenatti told the outlet. While Avenatti did not provide details regarding what he spoke to Trump's legal team about, he described the trial against Trump as being politically motivated out of fears the former president may be reelected. Quote, there is no question that this trial is politically motivated because they're concerned that he may be reelected, Avenatti told the outlet. If the defendant was anyone other than Donald Trump, this case would not have been brought at this time, and for the government to attempt to bring this case and convict him in an effort to prevent tens of millions of people from voting for him, I think that's just flat out wrong and atrocious. One of the clients that Avenatti was found guilty of defrauding money from was his former client, Stormy Daniels. In May of 2019, Avenatti was charged with defrauding Daniels. Prosecutors claim Avenatti has used a fake document in order to move $300,000 that Daniels was supposed to receive from a book deal. Instead, the money was used for personal and business expenses. Prior to being sentenced to prison, Avenatti was among Trump's top critics, even floating the idea of a presidential run against him in 2020. Oh my gosh. That is just crazy. I know why he's doing it. Yeah, it is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. He's doing it to try to get himself out of jail. That's just nuts. I mean, just when you think things cannot get any more weird up in New York City, this comes along. Why are pot ads being geared? Well, I can answer that. It has nothing to do with personal consumption on my part. Let me put that out there for the record, okay? I'm not token, nor am I smoking while I'm token, okay? There is a very healthy cannabis industry business that's sort of cropped up in my area, which by the way, medical marijuana is legal in West Virginia under certain circumstances. And more you are seeing dispensaries pop up in my area. Now, for my part, I mean, look, do I acknowledge that there are certain medical benefits to the use of marijuana? I do not dispute that at all. And for those people who are finding some measure of relief, be it glaucoma or cancer or other things, I get it. I find it, however, a little bit disturbing that, and I'm just speaking for my area, okay? Just speaking for my area. I find it a little bit more than disturbing that we're more interested in making sure there's an industry for cannabis and for, well, let's just leave it at cannabis, because that other subject gets into a whole other subject that I probably ought to stay out of for various reasons. Let's just confine it to cannabis. I would be much happier to see, and by the way, there are. I would be much happier to see steel plants and manufacturing plants of various products and more of that going into my area than I would be dispensaries of marijuana. And good morning to you, Professor. Glad you're able to join us. Always good to have you in the house. Always good to have you here. I would be much happier to see that than I would what's going on right now. But yeah, getting back to the story, yeah, Avenatti, apparently Trump's people reached out to Avenatti, and there's a reason for that. And I do not have the article pulled up, and I could probably get my hands on it, but it'd take me a little bit. I don't want to take too much time to do it. Avenatti has claimed at one time or another in recent weeks that Michael Cohen, Trump's former attorney, who arranged the payments to Stormy Daniels, that he and Stormy Daniels were engaging in an affair, and that a lot of what has happened to Trump back in prior to 2016 is a scheme cooked up by the two of them, and Avenatti is supposedly claiming, hey, I can testify to this. Now, whether that's why he reached out to Trump's people or Trump's people reached out to him, I have no idea. But it wouldn't surprise me to find out that that's what is being done here. Now, I can just hear, the haters out there right now. Michael Avenatti's a convicted felon, and you're going to put him in a courtroom to testify on behalf of Trump? Yeah, and Alvin Bragg is considering bringing a convicted perjurer and Michael Cohen into court to testify against Trump. The problem with bringing Avenatti is in what, somehow? I don't really see that critics, can say a whole lot about bringing in Avenatti, if he's even called upon to testify, by the way, in light of the fact that Alvin Bragg's going to use the testimony of a convicted perjurer in Michael Cohen. What's the difference? The question is, what's the truth? We'll see. One last story, and I'm going to call it a day. Apparently, Letitia James is back in the news. Letitia is out there right now trying to be a fly in the irritant where Donald Trump is concerned. Have you guys seen the latest from Letitia James? Check this out. New York Attorney General asks Trump civil fraud judge to declare $175 million bond, quote, without effect. Article written by Ella Lee at thehill.com, we have the following. The Attorney General's office has asked a judge to avoid a $175 million bond former President Trump secured to put off paying the larger monetary damage awarded in his civil fraud case. State lawyers said in court filings on Friday that the former president and his co-defendants, the Trump Organization and its top executives, including his two eldest sons, failed to prove the surety Trump used to obtain the bond actually has the money to back it. They also say the co-defendants did not show that sufficiently secured and assertable collateral backs up the bond. Quote, based on the foregoing, the people respectfully request that the court deny the movant's motion to justify the surety, declare the bond to be without effect, and order that any replacement bond be posted within 7 days, along with such other and further relief the court deems necessary and appropriate. Lawyers with New York Attorney General Letitia James's office wrote in a 26-page filing. Trump's bond was secured by the California-based Knight Specialty Insurance Company. State lawyers argue Knight is, quote, a small insurer that is not authorized to write business in the state of New York and, until Trump, had never before written a surety bond in New York State. The company has a total policy holder surplus of just $138 million, the filing says. Under New York state law, the companies like Knight can't expose themselves to liabilities like a bond or any potential loss greater than 10% of their surplus. Quote, based on the KSIC's policyholder surplus in its most recent annual financial statement of $138,441,671, the limitation of loss on any one risk that KSIC is permitted to write is $13.8 million, the lawyers wrote. The face amount of the bond exceeds this limitation by $161 million. The state also argued that because Trump has access to $175 million in cash he placed in the account as collateral, the court should find that he and his co-defendants failed to meet the burden to demonstrate the bond is sufficiently collateralized by identifiable assets. Oh my God. This woman, I swear. You know, I asked earlier, how much does Joe Biden hate Donald Trump? It's maybe I should better ask the question, how much does Letitia James hate this guy? First, she gets Engeron, the moron, the judge up in the case, to give a $450 million penalty. Then Trump tries to get the bond to be able to just even appeal the thing. He can't put it together. He goes to an appeals court. The appeals court says, okay, fine, look. We'll let a bond be issued for $175 million. Trump goes out, finds a bond company willing to do it. He puts money into an account as collateral to back the bond. Bond gets issued. Everybody's fine with this. Now she's come back saying, nope. That bond company's not good enough. Judge, you need to invalidate this, and we want a new bond issued within 7 days. I'm telling you right now, this is just my prediction for what it's worth, okay? Just my prediction. That I tell you what, the more that Letitia James and Engeron the moron and the entire judicial system up in New York opens the eyes of New Yorkers and people all around the country, there's going to be change that happens up there. I don't know when it's going to happen, and I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's going to happen. Take it to the bank. It's going to happen. They are absolutely destroying the legal system up in New York State. And I am telling you, the more she keeps on with this crap, sooner or later, the New York Assembly is going to step in. And before it's all said and done, Congress might wind up stepping in. I don't know how, but they just might. So, Letitia, you got a bone to pick with Trump, apparently. So you just keep on doing it, honey. And, the old expression, the expression is F around and find out. Go ahead, Letitia. F around and find out what happens. Oh, yeah, and no doubt about that. But I'm telling you, for sane people in New York State, New York City, they're not going to allow this to stand much longer. They can't. I mean, look, even if they hate Trump's guts, and secretly they're much like the folks you're talking to, common sense is going to kick in and go, hey guys, if we don't get a handle on this thing, we're not going to be able to run New York State the way we want to run it. Oh, yeah. And I've heard about this effort. I have heard about this. I don't think it's going to happen. But then again, the fact they're doing it, hey, go talk to RFK. They won't even give RFK Secret Service. And he definitely ought to have it. Over on Rumble, TBA says, sorry I'm late. No, don't worry about it. No worry about it. Yeah, and WWG1 says, good morning. And yeah, they're just jerking him around. Oh, I absolutely agree with that. Totally agree with that. And don't worry about being late, y'all. I mean, this is kind of an unusual brunch in that we're doing it on a Sunday. So if you weren't able to get in here till now, it's all good. I love you guys. You're all good. You're good with me. Oh, I have not. That's a pretty good idea, Christian. And I really should. But Tiffany Henyard ought. Okay. Y'all remember the show The Dukes of Hazzard? You remember the character of Jefferson Davis Hogg, known shortly as Boss Hogg? I ought to do one about Tiffany Henyard because her new nickname really ought to be Boss Henyard. Because she's running Dalton, Illinois like an old Southern County boss. She really is. She is just a piece of work. I've never seen or heard of anything quite like her. I mean, I thought that Lori Lightfoot up there in Chicago was bad, and I think the drama mama Fani Willis down in Georgia is bad, but Tiffany Henyard makes them look tame. So yeah, you're right. I really need to do a video about this. I just haven't had time to get into it. Tiffany is just a piece of work. I mean, just on so many levels. WWG1 over on Rumble says, The Dukes of Hazzard was in fact a documentary. That's great. Oh, that's great. Oh. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, I'll reach out to Nate. I don't care. I'd love to have him on here and talk to him. Oh, thank you, sir. It's very kind of you. Very, very kind. But yeah, I appreciate that. I really do. Yeah, so that is, we're going to wrap it up and call that conclusion to the brunch. I want to thank all you guys for being here. This was a load of fun. And, we'll be back to doing this next Saturday morning on a regular time, barring something I don't know, like a baseball game. But yeah, we'll be back next Saturday morning, 10:30 a.m. And also coming up this week, we're going to have our regularly scheduled Chatting on the Porches Thursday night and Tuesday night. And also, and Christian, I got to send out a reminder to you guys to see if you're available for this. This Thursday morning, we are doing live coverage of U.S. versus Trump, the presidential immunity case that's up before the Supreme Court. The oral arguments are this Thursday morning. We're going to have myself, and I got to reach out to my good buddy down in Louisiana, Daniel R. Street, who's the attorney. He said he wants to be here with us. I got to send out reminders to everybody. But yeah, I'd love to have as many on that panel as we possibly can, because this is going to be one of the most fascinating arguments made before the Supreme Court, and probably one of the most consequential rulings that we're going to have this term. I mean, there's a lot of cases in the next, let's see, the court adjourns, I believe, at the end of June. So you got June, May, really about 2 months and a week. There are going to be some serious consequential rulings that are coming down that are going to impact jurisprudence in this country for decades to come. So, I mean, if you are a Supreme Court watcher, strap in, y'all, because this is going to be fun. But this Thursday morning, we're going to be live stream covering the oral arguments of US v. Trump, the presidential immunity case. So if you're able to join us for it, we'd love to have you there. And in the meanwhile, you guys have a great Sunday and a great rest of your week. Tell your family members that you love them. And remember the words of that great American philosopher, Tom T. Hall, when he said, "It's faster horses, younger lovers, older whiskey, and more money." Thanks for being here, folks, and we'll see you later.